Between the flood, snow, drought, heat, and wildfires, the U.S. saw more than 96 disasters in 2011. Joining me now to give some insight on why this might be happening and what can we expect in the future is Dr. Sanjan. And what are some of the biggest events of 2011, Dr. Sanjan?
Well, good morning. You're right. So this was an unusual year. It was not just the hype. It really was extraordinary. Probably 3 to 4 times more big disasters. And some of the big ones, the real big ones, are obviously Hurricane Irene, which had this huge impact in South Carolina, but all along the eastern seaboard. And then the droughts in the south and the southeast. We had tornadoes that cut through a big swath, particularly in Alabama, Missouri, and Mississippi. And then we had snow in October that virtually shut down the northeast of this country.
Now
So those are some of the really big ones.
Yeah, and the tornadoes are particularly troubling to me because this was the most deaths that we've seen since 1925. It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, we broke pretty much every record when it comes to the number of tornadoes and some of the records when it came to the number of deaths, unfortunately, with tornadoes. And the month of April was an extraordinarily challenging month for a part of this country.
Now, do you think maybe this is becoming more of the norm over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, yeah, it's a great point. Don't you find it interesting that, people talk about 100-year floods or 100-year events, but they're talking about it quite frequently. I turn on the news and I hear a new 100-year things, and I'm thinking I'm not 100 years old. So these are occurring more often. They're becoming more of the new norm, and that's a little bit of a worrying trend. Now, last year, or this year, 2011, was an exceptionally odd year. We had both this thing called a La Nina year, which set up a different kind of weather pattern. It periodically comes and goes. And we had Arctic air moving much further south than normal. Now, you add to that things like, long-term climate trends, along with the fact that people are living often in places that put them in harm's way, and you get a perfect storm of events in 2012.
Now, do you think that these particular events, the tornadoes, Hurricane Irene, things like this, are maybe just a small piece of a larger multi-decadal cycle that we're seeing?
Well, that's a very hard question to really answer. The challenge with it is that we're very good at being able to understand long-term climate. And so we can look at historic records, but we can also look at things like, ice records to give us a sense of what climate looked like. But weather and individual weather events are still very hard to predict, as you know. So it's a hard thing to say whether we're part of a much bigger natural cycle. We do know that in the last couple of decades, we've had virtually every record in terms of how warm it's been broken, particularly in the south and the southwest of the country. And that doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon. Drought is becoming a way of life in South Carolina, but also in states like Oklahoma and Texas. Texas lost 600,000 head of cattle last year simply because there was not enough forage out there for those cattle.
Exactly.
Which meant food prices go up for the rest of the country.
Now, Dr. Sanjan, do you think we need to make some changes in policy or maybe change our building codes, where people live, things like that?
Sure. So there's some things you can't do much about, right, except hope for or pray for the best outcome. But there are other things that we absolutely can do. So one of the great things about weather, and with the way in which we predict weather now, we can be better prepared. And people who live in harm's way, and you should assume that pretty much anywhere in the country now, should have a plan of action for a disaster, a natural disaster, and make sure you go with it with your kids and things like that.
Definitely.
The second thing is, we really do need a long-term comprehensive solution to energy, because we know there's an impact and a cycle between long-term climate trends and how we use energy, along with how we build our cities. The other part about it is that using natural floodplains, given areas for rivers and lakes, to flood naturally is a hugely important thing, because it's very difficult to manage a river by just using levees and dams.
Exactly.
That river will find the weakest point and break out. And you create some floodplains, it's going to be that release valve that you need in case of emergency.
Well, Dr. Sanjan, thank you so much for watching the weather, and we hope for a better 2012 to 2011.
I think it will be, and you can go to nature.org to get a lot more information on this sort of stuff.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we'll have much more Low Country Live right after this.